Waking up early for the second day in a row, Simon feels excited about the extraordinary adventure he was about to embark upon. The previous day, Archie had gone through the plan to retrieve the stolen money. Simon was to take the M1 motorway out of London, changing to the M6 to Scotland. From there he would take the ferry to the mysterious island of Fevig on the Isle of Lewis and dig up the buried treasure. With everything arranged, Simon sits in his room on the eve of his trip, but then suddenly remembers that he has not sorted out anyone to look after Eric while he is away. He attempts to recruit Rebecca, but she says she is also going on a trip. A strange coincidence. Simon is forced to ask his wife to look after Eric, but on his unannounced arrival at her house, he discovers that she is entertaining a strange man who sports ridiculously over-whitened teeth. Who the hell is John? He finds himself lying to Sophie, and then has the fearful realization that being a criminal may not be as much fun as he first thought. The next morning I found Mrs. Minnison in the kitchen, drowning rashers of bacon in grease. "Another early morning, Simon?" "I have to go away for a few days," I said, taking £90 from my pocket. "Here's the rent money." "And the extra £5? I tried to hide a smile. "Eric won't be here, so I guess I don't need to pay extra this week." I went out to the car and sat staring onto the rush hour traffic. My words to Mrs. Minnison came back to me. Eric won't be here. This was the first time in 6 months that he was not by my side. Who would I talk to now? Talking to myself might be seen as a sign of madness, but I suppose conversing with a Labrador was no less insane. Nevertheless, I missed talking to him. He may not answer me, but his silence gave me space to make sense of my questions. I started the engine and pulled out into the traffic. Eric would normally be in the boot of the hatchback, but he had been usurped by my overnight bag and the other items I was taking. I thought of him with Sophie and, for a moment, hoped they were both missing me. But I knew as long as Eric was being walked, he would love the one he was with. And Sophie? She had a new focus in her life. Who the hell was John? Where did she meet him? My mind futilely played scenario after scenario, even though I was aware that the fiction I created in my head would not change reality. By the time I turned onto the M1, I'd started to feel better. This was a real adventure. My body tingled in the way that only comes when travelling with true purpose. The illegality, the danger, and the insanity of what I was doing did nothing but fill me with excitement. I had climbed from my suffocating cocoon and was testing my delicate wings at 70 miles an hour on Britain's first motorway. Just outside Northampton, I pulled into the motorway services for a cup of coffee. I sat at the only free table. It was covered with the debris of the last customer. Someone would come over soon to clear it, I thought. I drank quickly as I was eager to get back on the road. The dining area was crowded with people. I studied their faces, trying to read the stories behind their eyes. A family of mum, dad and 2 young children sat on my left. The 2 adults spent all their time controlling their offspring and never once exchanged a word with each other. To my right, a middle-aged woman sat alone, avoiding eye contact with a bunch of rowdy teenagers on the table next to her. I knew all these people had not just materialized as I entered. I knew they all had lives as intricate as mine, but as much as I tried, I couldn't see them. They all merged into one, and I realized that that was how I looked to them. Faceless, inconsequential, and unimportant. I abandoned my half-finished coffee amidst the McDonald's packaging that had still not been cleared, and left. Moving off from the parking area and struggling with incomprehensible signposts, my eye was caught by a figure standing on the access road. She was moving her hand up and down, thumbing a lift. She stared right at me. I tried to avoid looking at her, pretending to be studying the signposts, but part of me wanted to stop. Maybe it was because she was young and attractive, or maybe it was due to the loneliness that had insisted on travelling with me. I missed my boy's expressive brown eyes. Whatever it was, I pulled to a sudden stop at the side of the road. The car behind me hooted, swerved around me, and a lone finger was held aloft out of the driver's window. In my rear-view mirror, I could see the girl pick up her bag and run towards the car. She was tall and lean, white, middle class. I guess around 30 years old. I winced. Was that the best I could do? See strangers as demographics? The passenger door opened. "Hi," she said with a pleasant north of Watford twang. "Where are you going?" I asked her. "Anywhere north of here," she said. "I can do that." I patted the passenger seat. She threw her bag into the back and got in. I waited for a gap in the torrent of traffic and pulled out. "Where are you headed?" she asked. I glanced at her briefly. She wasn't just attractive, she was beautiful. "Scotland," I said. "That'll do. I'm Julie." "Hello, Julie. I'm Simon." "Thanks for stopping. None of those buggers would even look at me. They all pretended to be looking at the signpost." "Some people, eh?" I glanced at her again. She had deep brown eyes, stunningly full lips, and pale, unblemished skin. "Do you live in Scotland?" she asked. "No, I'm just visiting." "Family?" "No." "Oh dear," she said. "Am I being too nosy?" "No." I felt intimidated by her easy manner, such a contrast to my ineptitude around women. "What about you?" I asked. "What about me?" "Do you live in Scotland?" "God, no." "So why are you going to Scotland?" "As I said, anywhere north of here. I just need to get away." "Ah, a fellow fugitive from life." "No, not life. Just my husband." Even though I knew I had no chance with good-looking women, I always felt strangely sad when they told me they were married. I was never sure if it was just because it meant they were unavailable or because someone else had been successful. "You're running away from your husband?" "And I thought I was nosy," she said, turning to me. "Oh, sorry. No, that's okay. I'm just messing with you." She touched my elbow. "Are you running away from your wife?" "Ex-wife? No. I told you I'm going to Scotland on business." "Oh yeah, you said." We were silent for a few moments. I looked over at her. She briefly turned to me. We both smiled and remained painfully silent. I concentrated on the road. Suddenly, she spoke. "Yes, I am." "Sorry?" I am running away from my husband. Oh, right. Why? Because he's a pig. Good reason. Julie turned awkwardly in her seat, showing me the left-hand side of her face. Look, she said, pointing to her cheek. Her unblemished skin was marred by a large bruise. Your husband did that? I told you. He's a pig. But why? Why hit you? One of his petty controlling arguments. About what? The colour of the kitchen flooring I ordered. Kitchen flooring? Has he hit you before? She nodded. This is the last time, though. He won't be hurting me again. Panic suddenly gripped me. I glanced in my rearview mirror. He won't be following you, will he? No, he's not coming after me. You can be sure of that. She smiled to herself and relaxed back into the seat. Within minutes she was asleep. I turned onto the M6 just outside Rugby. I looked at her sleeping. Now she appeared appealingly vulnerable as well as stunningly good-looking. The blue motorway sign ahead directed me to Carlisle. I took the slip road. Julie stirred and opened her eyes. Sleeping Beauty awakes, I said. She looked half embarrassed and half flattered by my announcement. Where are we? She asked, stretching herself from her snooze and yawning. She reminded me of Eric. He often stretched in the same uninhibited way, but his yawn was always accompanied by a loud, grumbling, descending tone. Julie's was silent and feminine. We're just coming into Carlisle. I was going to stay here and then go on to Scotland tomorrow. Do you know someone here? No, I was going to stay at a hotel. I turned the car onto an A road. I wasn't sure if I should wake you up. I didn't know if you wanted to go all the way with me. She laughed. Well, you could at least buy me a drink before asking me that. No, I meant I didn't know how far you wanted to go. She touched my arm. When you're in a hole, Simon. I smiled with embarrassment. Stop digging, I said. I found a hotel just outside the city and drove into the car park. Well, there you go. Journey's end, I said. I felt self-conscious. I didn't know how best to say goodbye, and to tell the truth, I didn't want to. So, what are you going to do now? I asked her. Julie looked at me and smiled coquettishly. You could buy me that drink. We walked to the motel reception. A young man behind the counter put down the newspaper he was reading. Yes, sir, he said. Can I help you? Julie grabbed my arm and said to the receptionist, Sorry, can you give us a minute? She led me away a few paces. Look, Simon, the truth is, I've got nowhere to stay and no money. I didn't know how to respond. I put my hand into my pocket. I can lend you some money, I said. No, Julie said, gripping my arm tighter. I can't take your money. Can I just stay with you? A strange mix of sensations washed over me. I was astonished that she wanted to stay with me, but somewhere deep inside a voice was trying to be heard. Words of concern struggling to rise above the loud thumping of my libido. My newly discovered spirit of adventure came to the rescue, throwing the last of my caution to the wind. I said nothing. We walked back to the receptionist. He smiled knowingly. All sorted then? Julie took control. I was like a fish on the end of a line, but knew I was complicit in the snaring. A double room, please, she said. The receptionist tried to look disinterested. All righty, he said, and turned to take a key from its hook. In room number 34, Julie went straight to the minibar and helped herself to a miniature of vodka. She unscrewed the cap and downed the colourless liquid in one. Boy, I needed that, she said, slamming the empty bottle onto a shelf loudly. She took a deep breath and winked at me. So, what do you want to do? There must be a decent pub around here somewhere. I'm not much of a pub person, really, I said. Anyway, it's getting late. Ah, you want to go straight to bed? I was having increasing difficulty knowing how to cope with Julie's disregard for social protocols and the apparent looseness of her morals. Despite her overwhelming directness, I still couldn't believe she was simply going to climb into bed with me. Well, ask me about demographics or advertising standards and I would amaze you with my knowledge, but women? I simply had no idea. Sophie was the second girl I slept with and the first not to laugh. At the time, that seemed reason enough to marry her. Julie was looking at me expectantly. I had to do something. I needed more evidence, more certainty before I could commit to the idea that she actually wanted to have sex with me. A solution popped into my head, a simple test. So, Julie, shall I sleep in the chair or would you prefer it? Clever man, I thought. It's all down to her now. I watched her as she opened the minibar and took a second bottle of vodka. To tell the truth, I would have been relieved if she had just pointed me to the chair. I was tired and far too old for all this sexual tension. No, she said, between the two gulps that emptied the bottle. We'll share the bed. Oh, shit. I hadn't been expecting that. I undressed in the bathroom with the door locked. I brushed my teeth a little more carefully than usual and then returned to the bedroom. Julie was already between the sheets. I could just make out the neckline of a white t-shirt above the covers. So she wasn't naked then. I was glad I kept my underpants on. I climbed into bed beside her. She turned the light off and laid with her back to me. I snuggled up to her. She made no response. I could smell perfume in her hair. I pushed myself against her. She exhaled in a contented way. Eric makes that exact same noise, I thought. No, stop thinking about Eric. Not here, not now. Nothing seemed to be happening. Wasn't she supposed to turn around so we could kiss or something? I put my arm around her, laid my hand on her flat stomach. She immediately placed her hand gently over mine. So far, so good, I thought. Then she patted my hand and half turned to me. Isn't it nice that we can share a bed and still be platonic friends? She squeezed my hand and laid her head back onto the pillow. 3 hours later, I finally fell asleep. Hi, she said with a pleasant north of Watford twang. Where are you going? I asked her. No. Where are you going? I asked her. For fuck's sake, I was doing so well. And in the kitchen, drowning rashers of bacon in grease. Another early morning, Simon? I have to go away for a few days, I said, taking my £90 from my pocket. Here's the rent money. And it isn't there. What about the smile? In room number 34, Julie went straight to the minibar and helped herself to a miniature of vodka. She unscrewed the cap and downed the colourless liquid in one.